Hey, hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to today's workshop. Happy Sunday. I hope you're having an amazing day, enjoying your summer, staying cool, and really trying to make the best of this beautiful weekend here in July. I appreciate you tuning in today. And I wanted to come in today and talk to you about a couple things. One, as you saw, I titled the presentation about the good and bads of annuities. And then I also want to bring in some things that may be coming that concern me a little bit about your longevity, right? And the big thing that it's through the House as of right now, but that is a potential wage increase to the minimum wage of $15. Doesn't look like it's going to get through today, or at least not now, but I think there's going to be a big push for a minimum wage increase. And so I want to talk to you today about what that could mean for you long term if you have too much money tied up in fixed income sources without inflation adjustments on them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome everybody. I appreciate you tuning in, and I hopefully you find some good value in this. If you've been around for a while, I did do a presentation very similar to this before, but there's a lot of new folks here, and I wanted to come back and circle around to this because there's been a lot of talk again, about the annuity conversations, and then also with this announcement that people are really pushing for $15, and then the minute $15 is talked about, now it's $20, and then it's $33, right? So this is a very different environment that we're probably going to be heading into over the next 10, 15, and 20 years for current folks that are looking to plan for retirement. In reality, things like automation are coming, okay? I don't know if you've noticed recently, but I was at Home Depot yesterday picking up some things, and instead of having 8 cashiers lined across, ready to serve people, they had 2 cashier stations and 8 self-checkout stations with one person operating that, right? So these are the signs of automation that is coming. And the more minimum wage ticks up, the more jobs that were normally minimum wage jobs come into play. There's either going to be 2 things that are probably going to happen. More automation, right? So more computers taking care of things, or the cost of things is going to go up. Right, so could be problems either way, but if the cost of things starts really creeping up, inflation risk is a huge risk if you put too much money into fixed income sources, which is why I want to talk about that today. So hopefully you find some value in this, and hopefully gives you some things to think about as you're putting together your plan for retirement, and hopefully you don't jump right into making some bad decisions before you had a chance to make some good decisions. So hopefully it's find some value. I'm going to jump in today and talk about that. And we will cover this in a good amount of detail, I would say. So let's talk about that. So hopefully this is coming through okay. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the good and bads of annuities. Okay, so I actually used to be much more against annuities, but in reality, a lot of the studies I've done and a lot of the things I've looked into is, and for some people, a portion, right? It's a portion of your assets may make sense to annuitize, but I think most people jump in and they're putting way too much of the assets they have saved into an annuity, especially for those that have a decent amount of money, right? I've seen folks that are, getting recommended 65, 75, or 80% of their money into an annuity, and in reality, they can live off things like their 2 Social Security benefits, and they don't need anything beyond that except for, the above and beyonds, like the vacations, things like that they want to do. So how does it make sense to put all of your money into an annuity when you have everything covered by 2 Social Security benefits? It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about ways to think about this and some potential reasons you should purchase an annuity and maybe reasons you shouldn't. And then also, where to go look, if that's something you are interested in. Okay, so let's talk about that. So before we jump in, put my full disclosure up here. This should not be seen as investment, tax, or legal or any sort of planning advice for you individually. This is meant to be a general conversation, okay? So please don't jump in and do anything because you saw it here today. Please take this as information to help you make good decisions, because that's what I want for you. Okay, so in today's environment, fear is starting to creep up again, right? I think we're about 10 years going on, almost 11 years since the last major market downturn. So that has left a lot of folks thinking, well, what if the market crashes? How's that affect my retirement? I don't want to lose all my money, right? So I have a lot of folks that I'm hearing are putting a bunch of money just sitting in cash, sitting in government bond funds, like for those of you that have TSPs, sitting there, I believe it's the G fund, earning nothing. Folks that are just putting all their money in money markets. and then trying to wait and time the market until it goes down again so they can jump back in. Well, the first thing I want to say on that is you should never try to time the market. It's not a winning strategy, and no one's been able to prove that they can do it consistently, okay? You had a chance fourth quarter last year. If you didn't take it, you probably lost out on 10 or 15%, maybe even more of gains since the beginning of this year. So not a good strategy, okay? But we have to be realistic. The market does go through cycles, and the average is about 10 to 15 years till we see some sort of significant downturn. We're going on 11. So there's potential for that, okay? But we can plan for that, and we can separate our money in ways to really reduce that risk. But in reality, if you have your investments set up properly, it's actually a good thing sometimes to have a little market volatility, because that allows you to capture funds that you're going to be investing in that may go down in price and get them at a lower cost per share. That could be a good thing. But you want to make sure you have a chunk of money that is set aside, that is safe money, that's not going to go away for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it may be. So you want to have some safe money there, but your long-term money, having a little bit of volatility could be a good thing, but we don't want you to experience a 45 or 50% downturn, right? So if you're in a 100% S&P fund, then 100% S&P 500 fund, that's when you can be looking at 45 or 50% downturn. We don't want that. So we want to diversify. We want to diversify globally. We want to diversify across multiple asset classes. And want to make sure that even your fixed income sources are diversified so that you have short, medium, and long term. So these are things that you can do. And if you're smart about it and you do things the right way, really reduce the risk and volatility. So these are things I want you to be thinking about. Many investors, just nervous, right? And just at the end of the day, I think most people just want peace of mind, right? You're going into a new stage of life, thinking about retirement. Maybe you're 6 months away, maybe you're 6 years away. But if you're going into this stage, this is probably the largest transition you've ever made and the biggest amount of change you've experienced in probably the last 30 or 40 years even. So I understand being nervous and wanting peace of mind are something that are very important. And I think that's important, right? I think that's good. Even if you have to live off less, for some people, having some sort of guarantee brings comfort, which is why I think a lot of people like the idea of an annuity, because they get that guaranteed paycheck, they have that money coming in. So even if they have to live off less, that's a good trade-off for some people, right? Because they don't want to have to worry about any sort of volatility, and that I understand. So it makes sense in some places. So a question I'm seeing over and over is, should I buy an annuity? And so there's a lot that goes into that decision. And today I want to discuss, really want to just start the discussion with you and talk about some key points for you to consider. So the first thing I want to go over with you is buying an annuity is not a retirement plan, okay? So there's so many places that you'll go and they'll say that we're retirement planners, we specialize in retirement planning. And all they want to do is put all your money into one annuity product. And then basically what they do is they put all your money into that annuity product. You get that paycheck, coming in, and then they literally never talk to you again. They never follow up. They never check in with you. They never talk about inflation risk. They never talk about things like tax planning. If you do leave some money outside of the annuity, thinking about withdrawal strategies on how to get your money out of your retirement accounts in the most efficient ways possible and keeping the government's hands off your money. It's a real problem right now. In all honesty, the insurance lobby has pretty much won, okay? I'm going to be very honest with you. This industry, there's a lot of good people. It has a lot of potential to do insane amounts of good, right? When you can bring peace of mind to people and give them a plan, I think you can do a lot of good. But the industry lobbyists have won in a sense where now it looks like you're going to be able to, once the Secure Act comes into play, they're going to be opening up annuities inside of 401ks. So this leads to some problems. 401ks are supposed to be dealt with under a fiduciary standard, under ERISA guidelines, and annuities don't typically qualify under ERISA guidelines. If you remember back when the fiduciary rule was supposed to be coming through back in 2008, 2009, or excuse me, I should say more about 2010 through 16, they were really pushing for this, and then the current administration shut it down. We saw a huge dip in annuity sales when people thought they were going to have to abide by a legal fiduciary standard. What does that tell you? Most of these products are probably not great. Okay, I know there are some good ones out there, don't get me wrong, but the majority of these products favor the advisor and the brokerage versus you, the client. So what I want you to remember is annuity is not a retirement plan, but it can be a useful tool as part of your overall retirement strategy, okay? So for a piece of the pie, I think it could be okay. And for some people, it does make sense. But for a lot of people that think they need them, when I actually look at their scenarios, they actually don't. It's just more of the fear and the misunderstanding of how to align their assets appropriately to make sure the money is there for them when they need it. So in my opinion, annuities and other insurance products are just oversold to fearful pre-retirees or retirees, but they do have uses in retirement planning. Pushing you on fear and going to these seminars where you're fed dry chicken dinners and you're showed this amazing presentation where I'll tell you what, they are good at selling these things. And that is what they're trained in as a number one. They're trained in sales versus retirement planning and really comprehensive planning when it comes to putting all the retirement pieces in place. And you can tell that by if their main strategy is to just put you into an annuity without talking to you about risk, without helping you do a cash flow analysis, without helping you lay out your goals and really look at year by year when you're going to need money, how much you're going to need to draw, and to really help you look at the step-by-step game plan year by year in retirement, you could probably guess you're not dealing with somebody that's working in your best interest, okay? Because I can tell you, we look at year by year what the goals are going to need to be, and then we'll help you put a retirement income plan in place. And if it looks like there's going to be a shortage at certain places, that's when we talk about filling these things with other strategies. But for most of the time I've seen these things, they're oversold, and they're in reality they're just playing on fear. Okay, so be careful of that. Okay, so in retirement planning, one portion of your retirement planning is your income planning. So where's the money going to come from? How are we going to make sure your needs are taken care of? How are we going to make sure you can do the goals and the bucket list items that you want to do? So that is one portion, okay? So for example, what sources of income are we going to use to pay for your retirement? Some common sources of income in retirement are, taking money from 401ks or IRAs, right? So your retirement savings accounts. Some of you are still lucky and have pensions. I'm seeing a lot more pensions than I thought I would recently, actually. So I'm still seeing a lot of people with pensions, so that is wonderful. I expect for my younger clients that are in their 30s and 40s, they are probably not going to have this, okay? So for those of you that have pensions, that's wonderful. Please make sure you are optimizing your pensions for the long-term outcome. Social Security, highly, highly, highly underutilized. What some people forget is that Social Security is an annuity, right? I don't know if you knew that, but Social Security is an annuity, and it actually is probably the best annuity that's out there. There is a lot of fear about Social Security running out of money. I really don't think there's a whole lot to worry about if you are in your, let's say 50s or 60s at this point, because the potential point where Social Security is supposed to run out is about 2034. But right now, there's something called the Secure Act, already passed through Congress. It's going through, and I think it's going to pass. It looks like it is. And so we are planning now for that to happen. So what that's looking like is there's probably going to be an increase in Social Security taxes. That's going to be an incremental increase over the next few years. And as long as they hit 2% in additional tax for Social Security, or they take off the limit, which I believe is $128,400, somewhere in that range, $128,000 and change, where you don't have to pay Social Security anymore. If they do one of those things and remove those limits or raise taxes, then Social Security is going to be a good place. I highly, 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 highly doubt that if you're close to Social Security today and you're going to take it before 2034, which most of you will, then you really have to worry about that. Almost never has anything been done retroactively. And can you only imagine the chaos that would ensue if in 2034, folks that were getting benefits for 10, 15, or 20 years at this point would have to take a 20% cut? I just don't see that happening at all. It'll probably be my generation. I'm going to be 39 this year. So it's probably going to be me that has to be thinking about either an extended retirement, a full retirement age. So right now it's about 67. It may go to 68 or 69. Or we may get a reduction, which I just don't think that's going to happen. I think the likelihood is that we're going to pay higher taxes. So really optimizing Social Security now, especially if you're looking close and not taking your benefits too early, is a much better strategy than putting a huge chunk of money into an annuity product that gets locked up potentially, and you will never be able to touch that again. You just get that payment, okay? And then mutual funds, dividend-paying stocks, and annuities. These are all things that could be streams of income for you. So since many questions lately are about annuities, I want to shed some light on some benefits and some potential drawbacks on annuities to help you make your decision, okay? So as a disclaimer, I'm going to say it again. please don't take anything here that I'm saying as investment advice or recommendation for your particular situation. This needs to be done on an individual basis. And everybody's situation is different, and you need to put the puzzle pieces together to see what makes sense for you as an individual, okay? So when should you consider purchasing an annuity? So one reason or one time you should consider purchasing an annuity is when you just have not saved enough money to maintain your lifestyle in retirement. If it really looks like you're going to run out of money, then it might make sense to put your money into an annuity product and just figure out how to live off that fixed income stream, and you're just gonna be on that fixed income forever, and it's just gonna be what it's gonna be, right? So that is a lot of people. But there's plenty of people that have money saved and they don't necessarily need to do that. They're just thinking about an annuity out of fear, and those are the folks that I want you to caution and really looking at doing an analysis before you dive in and make that consideration, okay? Now, another reason you may want to consider annuity is just you literally do not want to take any investment risk. You would rather risk having to live off less in the future, lower your cost of living in the future, and just, and if things go up in cost, you don't care. You don't want to take any investment risk at all. Then it might make sense, okay? If you want guaranteed monthly income that you won't outlive, then that makes sense, okay? So again, this is why I think a portion of your assets might make sense to do an annuity. So that will give you, let's say you have Social Security here for your floor plus a little bit of income stream. That could be good for some people, but you don't want to put everything in there because then you're just giving up all your assets, and then inflation risk becomes huge down the road. All right, and then some of you just want to simplify the management of your finances, right? You don't want any help. You just want to kind of do things on your own. You just want to buy a product and have it be done. Then that might make sense for you, okay? And if you want to increase your monthly cash flow during periods of low interest rates, it could be a good solution for that as well. In all honesty, most annuities are paying okay right now. They're not paying great. So it looks like it might make sense to definitely consider a balance of what you're going to do. Okay. Let me check here for questions. Okay, so no questions about this in particular now. All right, so what makes investing in an annuity dangerous? Okay, complexity. Okay, so here's something that we're seeing all the time right now. These fixed index annuities. People are like all about them. They're sold like the best thing in the world. I posted about it a little bit yesterday here, but they're complex, okay? And there's a lot of gotchas and a lot of things that they could switch out. So the index that they're using, they could definitely switch out. The guaranteed interest rate that you're told that it's like 6 or 7%, that's on the future annuitization value. It's not necessarily on the money that you're putting in. So you can't just put money in, guarantee 6, 7%, and then take that money out a year later or 2 years later. That's not how they work, okay? They're much more complex than that. So you really have to be careful when you're doing this. So, there's things, and I'll talk about them in a second, but just a few of the basic types of annuities are fixed index, immediate, and variable. So there's a lot of differences in these products, and even though your goal may be to simplify your finances, it can get a lot more complicated first, okay? So if you guys don't know, that's where I bought Craig on my team. So Craig is my new hire. He's a CFP, and he actually specializes in annuities. He has a lot of experience in annuities. So if you have annuities, or you're thinking about getting annuities and you want help with looking at what you have, come visit, come talk with us. We can definitely review that for you and give you some insight from a third-party perspective. And we don't sell annuities. I can get you what you need, but we don't sell them personally, so you'll get an independent review. But these things can be very complex, and they can be expensive, okay? So high annual fees and or back-end surrender charges. So very commonly, when I'm looking at things like variable annuities, we see 2.5 or 3.5% annual expense. So yes, inside of a variable annuity, your money is invested, and it could be invested in some mutual funds, for example, but you may be paying a 2 to 3% annual expense, internal expense on that. So, if you're invested conservatively and you're hoping to get, let's say 4, 5, 6%, well, then you have to pay the mutual fund expenses, number one, but then you're looking at the expense of the product, which is another 2.5 to 3%. So it's going to be really, really hard to do well on a long-term basis when you're paying that high of fees internally. And then the other thing is you could have some back-end surrender charges. So if you put your money into an annuity, you may have an 8, 10, or 12-year surrender period where you can pay up to 10 or 12% of your original amount of your money if you want to get it back out. So if you're having drag on your investment returns of 2 or 3%, And then you have high expense mutual funds inside of the variable annuity. And then if you want to get the money out, you have to pay this big fee. I mean, it's just fees, fees, fees galore. So really, really hard to recommend these type of products for most people. I think most people would be better off having a more conservative investment portfolio with low fees than they would be putting their money in these funds. And then you could just do more, let's say, fixed income products that keep that volatility very low. I think that's going to be better for most people. So I really, really look into that for you before you made a decision here, okay? And tied up your money. And then many folks realize later that having their money tied up for long surrender periods of 5 to 15 years is just too long, and they draw their money early. And then there, like I said, there can be very large penalties known as surrender charges for this. Additionally, then you lost time in the market for the investment dollars you did tie up. So some annuities do give you, like, let's say a minimum return, let's say it's 5% or 6%, but you have to keep it there for 10 years, And if you won, at 6%, you're probably losing out. You probably could do better than that outside if you just invested your money. But so you're losing time in the market there. And then if you have to pay surrender charges because you need that money early, then that's all just money that comes off the top. So these are things that you really want to think about before you jump in and tie up everything there, okay? Here's another thing I hear all the time. Well, the person selling me an annuity said that the insurance company is paying all the commissions and that you don't have to pay anything, okay? So I tell you straight up, I hear this over and over. This does not exist, because I can tell you what, when you go to surrender your annuity early, what happens? Magically, the amount of commission paid to the broker and the company that sold you the product is very similar to your surrender charge. Weird, right? So, if you keep your money in there for 10 years or whatnot, then sure. But I'm telling you, these companies are very smart. They're very good at what they do, and they will make sure that they get paid very well, which is why you see like annuity companies, insurance companies have the biggest buildings in every town that they're in, because there's tons of money in these products. And in all honesty, if I sold these products, I could probably make a lot more money, for my firm. But I refuse to kind of go down this road because I just don't think it's right for the client. There are some products coming out soon, by the way, that are fee-only annuities or fee-based annuities. So I think those might be really interesting for folks like me that want to operate in a fiduciary standard, that we can still get paid something, but it's just a flat fee. But those aren't there yet. So right now, we just refer out. We have a company that we use that everybody there is on salary that can get you the products you need, but for a lower expense generally because there's not a big commissions being put out. So these surrender charges can be really, really bad, okay? And then another thing is these are sold too many times inside of a retirement vehicle like a 401k or a IRA. So the good thing about annuities is that you can get tax-deferred growth, right? So those can be good if you're already maxing out your 401k or IRA. But if you put these inside your 401k or IRA, then there's some problems. So while the money placed inside an annuity gets to grow on a tax-deferred basis, the withdrawals aren't necessarily tax-free. Annuities are typically taxed on what's considered last in, first out basis. So that's called LIFO. So when you draw your funds from an annuity, the money that comes out is considered earnings first and is taxed as ordinary income. Okay, so you're going to pay ordinary income on this money. So if you put money in, let's say outside of a retirement account, if you would have invested in a portfolio, you'd only pay maximum capital gains. So for most folks, you're only going to pay capital gains if you're outside of the 12% bracket. So for married couples, that's over like $78,000. Below that, you don't even have to pay capital gains. So, but even above that, you'll pay 15%. If you have money in an annuity, you're going to pay at your ordinary income rate. So if you're at 22% or above, then that's going to be what you're going to pay. And that could be a lot higher than you should be paying. Okay. But then once the value of your annuity falls below the amount you paid into it initially, then you can take your withdrawals tax-free. So, basically you're just getting your money back. So it feels like tax-free, but you're just getting your money back. It's not that exciting. Okay. And then on the other hand, if you purchase an annuity inside of your IRA, for example, then those payments are taxed at your full rate forever. Okay. So that sucks. So like the idea of an annuity is because you can have tax-deferred growth. Well, I see too many times that folks that recommend these products, the only money somebody has is inside their 401k or IRA. So they'll do in-service distribution over to their IRA, and then they'll sell them an annuity right there and then lock up that money. And the real reason they do that is just to make a commission, straight up, guys. I mean, that's really what it is. And then now that annuity money is going to be taxed forever at your full rate. And then once you start an annuity, you generally can't stop it, right? So now you're getting that payment every month. So this really hurts when it comes to tax planning. Most of these folks that are going to sell you these products will not advise you on tax planning because if you work for a brokerage, they're not allowed to advise on tax planning. So that's a problem. So this leaves you a lot less options for when it comes to things like income timing and partial Roth conversions. So what does that mean, income timing? When you are taking money out of your retirement accounts, you really want to look at your order of withdrawals, because if you take money out of certain accounts in a certain order, you can really keep a lot more of that money from the government, and that means more money to your bottom line, and that's generally always going to be a good thing, right? But once you start an annuity payment, it's just coming out. So this is a part of the problem with pensions sometimes is people that retire early and have a big pension, then we get limited on what we can do when it comes to tax planning because they have such a big chunk of money coming in. Same thing with taking Social Security early, and same thing here if you start an annuity. So you have the stream of income coming in, it's going to be income, and that does affect the ability for you to do some timing and really reduce taxes down the road. So it could be a downside there. All right, so what does this mean for you? Less money for you to keep and use in retirement after taxes. What we are all about here is tax adjusted wealth. So how much money can I help you keep after taxes? That's my number one goal for the most part. I shouldn't say number one goal. Number one goal is help make sure you can retire properly. But a big goal is how, if you have enough money to retire, then how can we keep the government's hands off of it to give you more to use for saving, giving, or whatever brings you joy, okay? That's really, really important to us. All right, and then the last thing I want to share with you today is for those that don't want to take any investment risks is, just so you know that even if you don't take any investment risk, you're still taking on at least one other large risk, and that's inflation risk. So with these new proposals that are getting pushed very hard to raise the minimum wage significantly, which I think nationally it's about $7 and change an hour. I think California is going to go up to 13 here pretty soon, which is still not enough to live comfortably, by the way. But, by having a national minimum wage that's at like $15, when state to state things can be very different, this can cause a lot of problems. I was in Austin last year, Austin, Texas, and my brother was getting married, so he had his bachelor party. And we went to an area where they had this idea where, they want to pay their workers a living wage. And then what they do is they price their food appropriately so that their workers can have a living wage. And then they say, okay, don't tip them, just we pay a living wage and just do it like that. Well, what I found out is I got a very mediocre cheeseburger, but I had to still pay $18 for it, okay? The cheeseburger was not good, the fries were not good, and the service was not good. But the workers had a living wage, so, good for them. I really struggle with this concept because I want people to have a good living wage. But at the same time, competition is healthy, and this is why capitalism has done so well for the majority of people. It has left out certain people, but for the majority, it's better to have a market-based system. And what I worry about for you as a retiree is if this comes into place and the cost of living goes up significantly, right? And you have all this money trapped in an annuity product that has no cost of living adjustment, because most annuities don't, that could really hurt you down the road. And that could really, really put stress on your lifestyle down the road, and which is a big worry for me, right? So if things go up in cost, that could really cause you a lot of problems if you have too much inflation going on and too much money tied up in one of these products. That's why I say I think a portion of your money is okay, right? Because you're going to have Social Security generally, and you have a little bit on top of that for guaranteed income. But I think we need to have some of that money growing for you on the long term, because inflation risk is real, and I want you to be prepared for that, okay? So here's an example. Milk and eggs today are not the same price they were 20 to 40 years ago, and the cost of living will go up in retirement. I started, I shop at Costco. I'm a kind of a good bargain shopper. I don't like overpaying for stuff. And so generally I buy this, it's really high quality bread. I forget the name of the brand right now. It might be Oro Wheat or something. But at Costco, you can get 2 big loaves of bread for like $5.75, okay? And 2 big nice loaves of bread. They have their nice potato bread, buttermilk bread, whatever. So 2 loaves of bread for $5.75. That's what I usually get when we do buy bread. I don't eat a lot of bread, but when we do buy it. And then the other night I needed bread for something because we were, the wife was making a recipe and we needed bread for it. And so we went to the store here, just a local Vons, right? It's kind of like Safeway, Vons, Lucky's, whatever. And that same bread was like $6 for 1 loaf, okay? $6 for 1 loaf of bread. And so it's just absolutely crazy to me that bread has gone up that much in cost. These are things that are very real. And if you don't prepare and you have too much money tied up in fixed income, it can really hurt you down the road. Okay. So to buy what you can buy today for $1,000 will take $1,806 in 20 years. So you can project the cost of things that you need to pay for today to probably double over your retirement time frame, at least, if not more. Okay, and in 30 years, it's going to take 24, 27 to buy what you can buy today for $1,000. So things are definitely, you can expect them to go over double. So if all your money's in this like one product that doesn't have a cost of living adjustment on it, this could put a lot of stress for you down the road. Okay, so I don't want you to do that. I think that might be why it'd be good for you to consider diversifying your income sources. Okay. And like I said, most annuities do not have cost of living adjustments, unlike Social Security, and then some pensions. Many pensions I'm seeing these days don't have cost of living. They got rid of that. Social Security is one of the only pensions that does have cost of living adjustment, or only annuities, whatever you want to call it. So that's why I'm a big fan of maximizing Social Security and really looking at for you when the best time is to take it. And for anybody that's worked with me, they can tell that the timing on that really does make a big difference in your retirement confidence. Okay, so I really want you to look into that first before you look at putting all your money into an annuity. All right, so like I said, this is called inflation risk. And the comments I saw said that it would be nice to have guaranteed income so you can budget. And you have to be careful because your budget may get much tighter in the future. Okay. So what does this leave you with? I want to give you some takeaways here, some things to think about. And my number one recommendation for you is that you have a comprehensive review of your financial situation before jumping into a product that may lock your money up for years. So work with somebody that is not going to have a conflict of interest where their paycheck comes from selling you this product. That would be my recommendation for you. If you want help with it, we can help you. If you want to find someone else, that's okay too. But get an independent review, because I have recommended annuity product for some folks because they do make sense in some situations. But in the majority, they really don't. But determine your short and long-term risks and determine if an annuity product makes sense for you, or if you'd be better served by considering maximizing other sources of income first, like your Social Security or pensions. And then the other thing I want you to consider is bucket strategies for assets. So with the bucket strategy, basically what you're doing is you're breaking your money up in different risk levels for different time periods in retirement. And this can add a ton of security and, in all honesty, avoid the need for most annuities. But it does take more effort, but it does give you a better chance of keeping up with inflation. And then you're not forced to give up control of your asset base, right? If you put a big chunk of your money into an annuity and you annuitize, now that money's all you get, that paycheck. The asset base is gone. You can't pull from it when you need it. So by having a bucket strategy, you can really set yourself up for protecting against inflation and then also keeping control of that asset base. That's why I like that a lot better. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. So if you want my help to discuss your retirement strategy, you can go to keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk to schedule a complimentary consultation. I will be vacationing from August 6th until about the 21st, 22nd. So I think all the available slots before then are full. So you'd have to schedule after that. But I would love to chat with you about this once I get back so that we can have a strategy for you for the rest of this year and then going into 2020. And I'm going to check now for questions here. And if you have anything that I can help you out with today. So, and like I said, I mentioned before, we'll spend about 45 minutes discussing your retirement strategy, what you've done well, areas you can improve, and overall what you can do to ensure you can retire with confidence, okay? So I'm going to check for questions now. Give me just one moment here while I pull up this screen. And if you would like to book a call, you can go here to my website. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, so Bob says Sam's Club is my friend. Yeah, Sam's Club, similar to Costco, could be a really, they have good deals there too. I used to have Sam's Club, but I didn't see the benefit of doing both, and Sam's Club's farther away. So let's see. Grace asked, what is an annuity? Said she's a newbie. Grace, hopefully I answered that for you. Basically, an annuity is just it's some sort of fixed income payment. So your Social Security is an annuity, a pension is an annuity, any sort of fixed income payment that you'll generally get for life. That's what that is. So I think we talked about that already. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to put this up here. So Michelle says, please tell me about fiduciary now. I read something on the internet 2018 that fiduciary does not mean what it did before, and not sure how to explain it. Yeah, honestly, guys, this is a mess, okay? So there was going to be a fiduciary rule passed that will require all financial advisors to operate under a fiduciary standard, which means they have to do what's in their client's best interest first before their own. Because currently, if you're dealing with like a brokerage, and let's say somebody has a Series 7 license, for example, they are actually legally obligated to do what's in their brokerage's best interest first before their own. So some of you know I passed the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner test, a couple weeks ago. I guess it's been a week now or whatever, 2 weeks maybe. But the CFP board is going to release their own fiduciary standard starting in October. They're not going to be holding people accountable really till June of the next year. But what it means, Michelle, is that the advisor has to legally do what's in your best interest before their own. And so there's been large brokerages, right? So like the Edward Jones of the world has already said they are not going to be really wanting people to have CFP designation because their process or their advice does not meet a fiduciary standard. And so fiduciary standard is very tight. And honestly, it's a lot of extra work. And we have to say, we have to give up income sometimes because we have to do what's in the best interest of the client first. But I think that's the best way to do business. To me, it doesn't make sense. Lawyers, doctors, CPAs all have to operate on the very strict fiduciary standard. So I like the idea that was coming. It got struck down. The insurance lobbies won. It is what it is. And so now, people, there's this whole rule called regulation best interest, right? So Reg BI. This came out from the SEC, and the fiduciary advocates are strongly against this because it's going to be very confusing for you as a consumer to know the difference, right? Because what we're all going to say is, we're going to do what's in your best interest first. It's like, well, okay, that's such a wide open net. And if you really read through regulation best interest, there's a lot of open doors where people that are operating under that can misinform you and really essentially like do things that are not in your best interest, and there's nothing you can do. There'll be no accountability. So this whole brokerage thing is really tricky. And then the other thing is there's advisors that are what are called hybrid, okay? So they have a brokerage, but then they also operate under an RIA, which is a registered investment advisor. So my firm, Keep It Simple Financial Planning, is a registered investment advisor, but we are independent and we do not operate with a brokerage arm. So we're an independent RIA, independent fiduciary. That's what you want, okay? That's my recommendation for you because that's the cleanest, best business model you're gonna get in this field, okay? And then there's a hybrid model, which is RIA, which has a brokerage arm. So they still say they're fiduciaries, but what happens is when they're giving you advice on your retirement accounts and things like that, they have to operate under a fiduciary standard. When they recommend an insurance product like an annuity or like whatever it may be, any sort of insurance product, then they actually think like they take off their fiduciary hat, they put on a new hat, which is called suitability, okay? Suitability is, for lack of a better term, it's kind of garbage, right? It's just really not good. And it's such a wide open standard that there's really very little accountability, and it's I just don't think it's good. My parents were taken advantage of big time by somebody calling themselves a financial advisor that recommended products that were technically suitable, but they were horrible, okay? And this is why I do what I do today, to try to help protect consumers and especially retirees. Like everything I do, I just think about what would I do for my parents, right? What would I do for my brother or sister? That's how I do business. And if you operate like that, I think you're gonna do fine long term. But this is a problem with the industry right now is they're saying fiduciary, anybody can be a fiduciary, and it's just a mess. So I hope that explains it, Michelle. So right now, I recommend you ask a couple things. Are you fee only? Okay? Fee only, not fee based, because fee based is a hybrid, okay? Fee only. And I recommend you just pay for advice, honestly, right? Yeah, it may cost you a little bit of money, but at least you're going to get advice that's in your best interest, okay? And I see it more as an investment, because if you are working with somebody that's going to help you return money on taxes, help you set up your investments long term, and that's going to give you advice in your best interest first, that's an investment because it should pay off easily for the long term if you're somebody who's really operating in your best interest. Whereas if you go get somebody that wants to sell you a product and they say the advice is free or the plan is free, then you're really opening yourself up to be taken advantage of. Not saying you will, there's some good people out there, but I see a lot more bad situations than I see good. So, after looking at what the CFP board is coming out with, I do feel good about working with the CFP, but it's not perfect, right? So fee only, registered investment advisor, independent, I think is going to be your best bet to get advice, okay? So hopefully that answers your question, Michelle. I know it's kind of a long explanation, but I want to make sure you were clear on that. Let's see here. Okay, so Mary has a question. I have an annuity now. I've changed advisors. Said you have to stay in it. You don't have to stay in it, but they may be advising you on that based on the amount of surrender charge you have, for example, right? So I really look at these and let's say, okay, let's say you have a 10% surrender fee for your assets, but maybe you have another 9 years until your surrender charge is up. Well, it's like, can we make up that extra 10%? Because if the product you're in is going to return you 3 or 4%, can we do an extra 3% a year, at least 3 of the years over those next 9 years? There's a good chance you could do that. So I really want to look at your situation, Mary, and help you understand what you have first, if it made sense for you to stay there. But I don't think you have to, because there's always a surrender fee that you could pay, but that becomes a trade-off, right? Do you pay the fee and then move somewhere else and do something better for yourself long-term, or does it make sense to write it out? So I want you to look at that first before you jumped in and made a decision there, okay? Let's see here. Okay, so Mark just made a comment. Yeah, so this is a good one, Pat. So I read that a lot of restaurants that were using the living wage method have abandoned it. Yeah, I would absolutely not want to have a higher wage, because what's going to happen is you're going to cut hours, right? So I worked in restaurants all the way through college, and I was making like $100 to $250 some evenings working in nice restaurants. And, I don't care about a minimum wage. I was more worried about my tips, right? So if you have a living wage, then that's going to discourage tipping. And so you're probably going to end up with a lower average amount. And most servers or most bartenders that I know would much rather have their tips than they would have is quote unquote living wage, because they're going to do better. I mean, even in lower income parts of the country or lower cost of living, I should say, that minimum wage is like $2.35 for workers, you can still easily average $20 to $25 an hour working in a restaurant. So I think the servers don't want it, the bartenders don't want it, the restaurant owners don't want it. So I really don't think it should be imposed on these people. I really think it should be left up to the market. And in all honesty, if a minimum wage job is not something that helps you survive, you need to work on your skills. You need to find ways to provide more value to the market and do different things, okay? And I know some people live in areas that are tough, but if you can find a restaurant job and you can get good at just helping people and making people like you, you're going to do a lot better than minimum wage anyways. I've never seen anybody do really worse than that, okay? Bob says, Sam's Club is my friend. Yes. So Laura asked me a technical question about that. Laura, if you can set up an appointment with me, because here, I'm going to show you her question just so you guys can see this. Can you give me an example of a 6-year-old person purchased an annuity with about $100,000? How much would they receive each month? So Laura, this is just such a wide open question. There's so many types of annuities. There's different types of payouts, and there's different things that you may need from your annuity, like different types of protections. And I would really want to go into the situation with you with a more detail. Okay, so please set up a call with me, and then we can talk about that. Okay. All right, so that's it for question, guys. So once again, I appreciate you watching today. If you would like to schedule an appointment for when I get back from my little vacation, go to keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk. I would love to speak with you, and it is complimentary, no cost. And I try to provide as much value as I can. I want to get you complete clarity on your retirement scenario, what you need to do, where you're at, things you may have done well, things you may want to be thinking about doing, okay? And if there's things that are more technical you want some help with, love to talk to you about that, okay? Other than that, have a great Sunday. I appreciate you, and I'll be talking to you guys very soon. And I want to say have a wonderful weekend. Be safe, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye now.